If I were to ask you what your thoughts on the iFruit app were, some of you may have called it cool, others might have called it useless, and there are some people who don't even know what I'm talking about. So I decided to take a trip down memory lane and look back at the iFruit app. Was it any good? Why did it fail? And will it be making a return? Whatever your thoughts on the iFruit app may have been, you can't deny that for a time, it was actually pretty cool. For being released in 2013, the app had some cool features you could use that were also able to interact with your GTA 5 and online characters. And in fact, with an emulator, you're actually able to still use the app. So I was going to take a deep dive into it myself, except it crashed immediately, which I'm sure won't be a huge problem for the app's entire lifespan. There were two major parts to the iFruit app, the Chop Training and the LS Customs. Chop Training was an interactive minigame that allowed you to train and play with Chop. Your goal was to maintain his happiness meter, and you could increase this by either feeding him, petting him, or playing one of his 3 minigames. In the park minigame, your goal is to keep other dogs away from Chop's girlfriend, scaring them off within the time limit. With Street, Chop must keep Ballas away from Franklin's Buffalo on a random street in Los Santos. Chop must rip off the bikinis from the women that pass by and avoid getting shooed away by annoying juicers. Losing any of these games would cause Chop's happiness to go down, but winning them would even unlock some cool collectibles. All in all, it was quite primitive for a mobile game, but it was at least fun to mess around with, especially while you were doing your first playthrough back in the day. And then there was the Los Santos Customs. Now, the LS Customs is exactly what the name implies, although unfortunately the app version is far more primitive than the one we have in-game. The LS Customs app allowed the player to modify your single-player vehicles, being able to change simple stuff like the engine, rims, color, etc. When you made changes, you would be asked to head to Los Santos Customs in order to apply the changes, and your car would be upgraded. For GTA Online, however, the app had its limitations, only being able to customize the last 10 personal vehicles that you drove. And finally, there was a license plate creator. This allowed you to make custom text for your in-game license plates that you could fit across every car that you own. This is also by far the app's most used feature, as up until 2022, people were still using it to create custom license plates. In theory, the LS Customs part of the app should have been a lot cooler than it actually was. I always found it to be more of a novelty rather than actually practical, as there aren't very many times I could think of changes to make to my in-game car while I wasn't playing the game. But while up to this point, I've been trying to give just a basic rundown and do the app as much justice as possible, I have failed to mention one crucial part about the iFruit app's entire existence, and that's the simple fact that the app barely worked. The app was extremely prone to crashing, to the point where doing almost anything on it could result in a crash. I'm not exaggerating when I say that either. While researching for this video, I found that almost every post about the app on Reddit is related to it either crashing or just not working at all. Rockstar rarely brought new updates to the app, and every update they brought to GTA Online ruined the app even more, as they added new vehicles that weren't recognized on iFruit, resulting in an instant crash. It would be an understatement to say that the app was a complete mess, and to be honest, it is a miracle it was able to last as long as it did, all the way until it met its eventual demise on December 12th of 2022. Which then brings me back to my original question of why did the app fail? Overall, I would say that the app seemed like a fun and potentially big idea, but it lacked enough practical use to make it worth using. Like, let's be real, the Chop game was fun to mess around with and the license plate editor was cool, but the problem the app really faced was that it was completely redundant. Like, yes, the features were cool, but were they features that would have been better suited in the actual game? I don't know anything about coding or game building, but I would imagine that something like the license plate editor could have just been added into the LS Customs menu. And the Chop game, I think, would have made a lot of sense as a minigame on Franklin's phone. In my opinion, the app's biggest flaw is just the fact that it didn't add enough value for sometimes needing to go out of your way to use it. Like, you could edit your car with the limited selection in the app, but then you still had to go to Los Santos Customs after loading into the game to have the changes applied, defeating the entire purpose of doing it on your phone. On top of that, doing it this way would have solved Rockstar's biggest technical issue with the app, which was the constant crashing. I mean, honestly, Rockstar is kind of lucky that the app flopped, because if people actually enjoyed using it, it wouldn't have mattered because it almost never worked. Sure, you could say they might have prioritized it more, but they didn't even learn from their mistakes with the RDR2 app either, as that is also another buggy mess. Although, the RDR2 companion app does confirm one thing, and that's that Rockstar loves the idea of companion apps. And after taking a closer look at what we saw in the first GTA 6 trailer, it seems as though that it might be making a return. After watching the first trailer, one thing was made quite obvious. Social media will play a massive role in this game. I don't think anyone would deny that. It makes logical sense given the trends of TikTok and Instagram Reels over the last few years, and it's represented perfectly with what seems like Rockstar's recreation of such apps in the trailer. But this had me thinking that maybe it's more than just a reference to our current times. This is just some speculation on my part, but we've seen that Rockstar has at least some interest in companion apps over the years, and despite the app barely working and features being redundant, the app still lasted over 9 years. And even though RDR2's companion app didn't go down well either, I would imagine Rockstar has probably thought at some point that if they had a better idea for it, then it might have a more repeatable use. For example, something like TikTok. It is no doubt that one of the best additions that Rockstar made to GTA 5 was the Rockstar Editor. That one feature has allowed people to make some of the most impressive clips and movies over the years, and a feature that fans missed with RDR2 despite modders bringing it in later. I believe that having something like a TikTok-esque app solely for GTA 6 related clips using the Rockstar Editor would cause for way more benefit to both players and to Rockstar. Now, this is only one of my theories for what I think those social media clips in the trailer may represent. However, I do strongly believe that going the route of essentially a GTA 6 clip farming app would be an easy way to provide more exposure to both the players and your game. So even though GTA 5's iFruit app wasn't very popular among players, it's undeniable that Rockstar likes the idea of companion apps. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say that there will be another one for GTA 6. However, I think if they release one along the same lines as iFruit, it will eventually suffer the same fate. And with needing to build an app that is going to be alongside one of the biggest games of all time, Rockstar is going to need to deliver huge. And whether they're able to do that, we will have to wait and see.